HDW under control. The New York City Board of Estimate promptly pivoted from pleading poverty with regard to the city jails to discovering $108,794 in available funds, which was passed along to DOC in hopes it would help calm the facility. Jail administrators have long cultivated the art of explaining prisoner unrest in terms flattering to polite society and supportive of higher budgets and more power for corrections departments. The primary cause of this disturbance, however, was more than a mere amalgamation of poor conditions and surely not a deficit of institutional capacity. It was instead fundamentally tied to the broader historical moment that produced it. As the Great Migration from the Jim Crow South redoubled following World War II, New York City saw a sizable influx of African American residents, ultimately numbering in the millions. In New York, they faced a northern variety of segregation, marginalization from employment and housing, and criminalization by police, courts, and jails. The typical prisoner at HDW at this time was black, between 25 and 30 years of age, hailed from outside of New York State, possessed an elementary school education, and was locked away on charges of disorderly conduct, drug possession, or sex work for an average of 5 months. These women were designated second-class citizens from birth and denied adequate housing, employment, and treatment before the law. In turn, they were deprived of their freedom for crimes attendant to daily survival. Perhaps they had believed a better life was in store for them in New York City, but HDW made plain a truth that Malcolm X would argue a decade later: if you black, you were born in jail, in the North as well as the South. As long as you south of the Canadian border, you south. The reality of life in New York for these women was consignment to the lowest tiers of the labor force, whether in precarious legal employment or the harsh world of informal economies. In either case, they were subjected to perennial harassment by the cops, who represented the social order that simultaneously exploited their labor and made their daily lives as difficult as possible. Once imprisoned, these women struggled to eke out a dignified existence, packed for upward of 3 years into a cramped and squalid facility never intended for more than temporary detention. Surely the conditions inside jails constitute social ills sufficient to justify rebellion, but they are only part of the story. The deeper context in which such uprisings unfold is a broader and more complex social terrain, a radicalized social order defined by human disposability and held together by violence. When carceral facilities are thus situated, the question begging explanation is not, why do people sometimes rebel, but why, most of the time, don't they? A monument to those who conceived it. The setting of these dramatic events was a 12-story facility overlooking 6th Avenue, resembling an Art Deco high-rise and marked simply Number 10 Greenwich Avenue. Although nondescript by design, the facility nonetheless stood out. The idea was to make it look not like a jail at all, but like a new apartment building, writes essayist Tom Wolfe. In the place of bars, there are windows with a heavy grillwork holding minute square panes. The panes are clouded like cataracts. Actually, the effect is more like that of the power plant at Yale University, which was designed to resemble a Gothic cathedral, but in any case, it does not look like a jail. HDW was adjacent to the Jefferson Market Court in Greenwich Village, known for lively night sessions revolving around illicit street life, especially sex work. While the jail had become notorious in New York City long before the events of 1954, like many jails and prisons, its life began as product of a hard-fought campaign by progressive-era reformers, including the local temperance movement and the Women's Prison Association. Prior to the opening of HDW in 1932, women detained awaiting trial simply lived in police station cells pending the outcome of their cases. Legal scholar Clarice Feynman describes a status quo in which detained women, mostly mendicants, prostitutes, vagrants, or elderly, were, regardless of age, offense, or health, housed together often in a common cell, and it was not unusual to have mothers with babes in